Welcome to Chandler in Focus. I'm Councilmember Rick Heumann. Today we're going to talk about Best Buddies and our City Recreation Division with two great guests today, Tim Bolen with Best Buddies and Sandy, I always mess this up, Munoz-Weingarten with the City's Recreational Division. Thanks for joining us today. So but let's begin by sharing your backgrounds with our viewers and stuff. Tim, you want to talk about your little background? I understand you, my assistant and you grew up in the same town. Didn't know each other, but.
Yes. Grew up in Gaylord, Michigan. Was there until I was a freshman in high school, and then my father took a government job with Alaska, and so we moved up to Anchorage, Alaska, until I was a senior in high school and realized I wasn't going to end up with a running scholarship there. So I moved back to Michigan, but moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and ended up attending Eastern Michigan University on a running scholarship, which I absolutely fell in love with. And from there, ended up moving to Arizona in '92. Had an aunt that had cancer and thought I didn't have any commitments. Might as well move somewhere where it's nice and warm year round, do some racing, have some fun, and been here and have loved it ever since.
Cool. Yeah. How about you, Sandy?
Well, I have been in Arizona since 1987 full-time when I was hired to work as a park ranger on the South Rim of the Grand Canyon. That seems like another lifetime ago. But I ended up leaving the Grand Canyon in 1995 to go work for the city of Phoenix. And I was there for 9 years in the Adaptive Recreation Services office, and then ended up working at South Mountain Park, running the Environmental Education Center there for 3 years, before really coming to full circle, coming to work for the city of Chandler about 8.5 years ago. And I was here when the Environmental Education Center opened, and kind of my job kind of evolved, and now I'm considered a recreation superintendent. So as those responsibilities, I oversee still the Environmental Education Center, the Senior Center, which includes our therapeutic recreation programs, and the Community Center downtown here that also includes our teen programs. So have a lot of irons in the fire, and I love it that way.
We're not talking about the Environmental Center today, but that is the secret gem, the hidden gem of Chandler. For people who don't know,
Yes.
Chandler Heights and Lindsay, great. It's one of our 2 mountains in Chandler, so I had to put a plug in for that.
It's the highest point in Chandler.
It's the highest point in Chandler, so all of 17 feet or something. But anyway, Tim, talk about you're with Best Buddies. Talk about your role there, and let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So Best Buddies serves intellectuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. We primarily serve youth right now. Currently, we're on probably 50 different schools that serve 2,800 kids. So we're pretty excited about the growth that we've had over the last few years, but there's a lot of work to be done. It is an area, I'm sure, as you're aware of, once these youth graduate out of high school, there's just a lot of what ifs, what happens next, and empty holes that, hopefully Best Buddies programs in the future can keep kind of filling those. And through our programs, we try to foster these kids with these relationships in schools that can carry on post-school year, so at least they have something to really look forward to after school is done. But yeah, that's just one component.
How did you get involved with Best Buddies?
Yeah, so I had 2 family members with IDD in itself, intellectual and developmental disability, so I'll refer to IDD a lot. Sydney, she had what was called Pallister's-Hall syndrome, a form of cerebral palsy, except for a little more extreme. None of her internal organs developed at birth. So she was one of those very low-functioning kids, but she had a completely functioning brain. And so for me to see the impact that happened on the family and just the amount of care that it took with Sydney was a huge eye-opener for me. And then had another niece, Sarah, who's a high-functioning individual with IDD as well. But that's kind of what really raised my awareness to it. But I didn't know what Best Buddies was until about 2 months before I even interviewed for the job. Never even heard of it. And so for me, it was just one of those full circle. Sydney had passed away on her 10th birthday. And one of the big things for me that, and of course, as you know, one of the big things that was missing when she passed away was that we had a goal of hopefully being able to go and do a marathon together. And so when she passed away, that hole was left. And so then I started to do different events, various events, promoting them myself under my business at the time. And all to raise awareness for IDD. And Lord knows what as Faith had it, all of a sudden Best Buddies popped up on my screen one day. I showed up at one of the events, fell in love with it, went and spoke to one of the employees, and she said, you need to come in and just have a talk with one of our senior ops. And I did, and next thing I know, I was offered a job. So, yeah.
And what is exactly your position with Best Buddies?
I'm the Arizona State Director.
Cool.
So I oversee the entire state programs here.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And, people don't realize with CP that brain functions sometimes are not affected at all.
Right.
And from my background in the disabilities community with my sister and stuff, is it's amazing how many people that there's the stigmatisms and everything else that go along with it. That's kind of crazy. What's been one of the most rewarding experiences doing this?
God, there's so many, honestly. Waking up every morning and being able to say that this is a job, that's, for me, that's probably one of the most enlightening things for me, because, before it was always living from check to check, and it wasn't necessarily what can I do the next day in order to really make an impact, and the decisions that I get to make to be able to do that is probably the most rewarding, because I get to hear from families, countless families, all the time, in the stories of, how their child has truly been impacted from one friendship in the school program, or, they attended an event and where typically their child would sit alone, they now have 20, 30 kids that will come over and embrace them and get engaged with him and acknowledge him. And as when you're an autistic child or a child with CP, a lot of times what happens is, these are children that they just want to be seen. I mean, they just want to be appreciated, and validated. And so for me, that's probably the biggest thing, is I get to see that and feel that and get to be part of that.
That's very cool. You went to them in 2011, I understand.
I did,
right?
Yep.
How many employees or how many people you talk about? Do you have so many people working there, and then you have lots of volunteers, I would think, as well, and stuff?
Yeah, so we are, we're primarily a volunteer-driven nonprofit. We only have 4 employees here in Arizona, and we have 2 program managers to oversee all 50 of the schools, and then we have 1 development director that basically helps me promote all of the events that we put on for the fundraising so we can run our programs. And that's it. And we run about as lean and as mean of a budget as we possibly can. And it works out great for us. And we have, the volunteers come from all the kids that are in the schools that want to be part of the program, all become part of that volunteer network, all the parents that are involved because they see the impact that is made with the kids.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's never ending, but yeah, it's pretty incredible.
How many schools? You have schools in Chandler?
We have 2 schools in Chandler.
Okay.
Yep.
Which ones do you have?
We're in Bolen,
Okay.
and we were in Chandler, but now they branched out and do, I don't know, like Chandler Buddies or something like that, which is totally great because it's still the same program.
Right.
And so as far as I'm concerned, it's a beautiful program.
Right. So
yeah.
Talk about some of the programs that Best Buddies does. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing with Patrick, but talk about some of the programs that are available out there.
Yeah, so probably the primary focus that we put on is the younger youth individuals that we have, which is our school program. And we start in the middle schools to high schools to universities. And we're in 9 middle schools, 4 of the universities, and the rest are high schools. And those programs are totally centered around really engaging the special ed classrooms and making sure that we can get the kids to identify themselves with the special ed classrooms and get that classroom engaged with the general population in the school. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of schools where even the special ed classrooms, even nowadays, are still completely isolated. There's not a lot of student engagement. And so we feel like we really are winning at the schools when we come walk into the school and we'll see the Best Buddies banner down the wall, or we might see the buddy pairs walking down the hall together, or they're having lunch together. For us, that's a huge win because these just not too many years ago, you would never see that. So that's probably our biggest focus where we really put the Buddies program. But we do employ an individual Charles at Silicon Valley Bank, and the overseeing him and making sure that he can keep that upward mobility and job employment is absolutely huge for us. When you're looking at a population that may only see, out of the entire IDD population, only 13% will ever be hired, and statistics show in Arizona that is just absolutely, I mean, horrifying in my book. I mean, you have so many of these capable individuals. I mean, you look at individuals with autism and the capabilities of what they can do with electronics and music and so many different abilities that they have. That's an area that we definitely need to keep expanding and focusing on. And that's our goal. We run a self-contained ambassadors program. And what we felt the need, we don't have funding for it, but we still run the entire program, is we felt that we needed to fill that gap of, after these kids graduate from school, what's next. So we created an entire year-long track for ambassadors, so kids that graduated out of school. Some kids that want to come that are still in school are more than welcome to come to the ambassadors, but the idea is to have them get engaged back in our ambassadors. And ambassadors is all about self-advocacy. It's all about how to interview for a job. It's about learning how to take the bus system. It's about learning how to dress properly. Anything that's independent living, that's what all the ambassadors program is about. So we're really, really excited about that.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about those kinds of things. There's a lot of our students that are not any kind of developmentally challenged that need those same kinds of things, how to take the bus, how to get dressed for work and things like that.
Yeah.
Are there wellness programs that you guys do?
So ideally, that's never been one of the programs for Best Buddies, but because of my background, I've actually brought that into Arizona market.
Right.
And I'm really, really proud about that. I've always been one of those health nuts, you know, a professional coach for several years, a runner since I was 9 years old. So, you know, health and exercise has always been just a part of my life.
Right.
And so, yeah, so wellness is a huge part of our Arizona. If you look at our line of events that we have now, we have our Team Best Buddies Marathon team. We have our Phoenix Dizzy cycling event, which provides opportunity for the IDD community to come and ride bikes on a tandem. If they can't ride on their own, we'll give them a professional rider that will take them around the track so they can experience it. We got modified bikes, so if they can't ride at all, we'll put them in the chair and we'll take them around. We have our Camp EKS, which is up in Flagstaff, and really that's all centered around all different types of adaptive sports for them to be able to experience, whether it's kayaking, hiking, fishing, all kinds of different outdoor activities. So yeah,
Cool.
It's pretty cool.
That's very cool. So we're going to go to Sandy for a little bit, and then we're going to come back. I want to talk
Okay.
about Patrick and some of the things you guys, the race that's coming up and things like that. Sandy, the city offers a lot of therapeutic recreation programs for individuals with physical and mental limitations. Share what kinds of types of programs we do and what we offer.
Sure, and it's interesting listening to you, Tim. It sounds like you've started off with a few programs, and then based on participant need, you expand and say, okay, we're going to do this now, we'll do this now. Because I think the challenge is to allow individuals with disabilities to incorporate into mainstream life as much as possible. And not be invisible.
Yep.
And so what we do in therapeutic recreation with the City of Chandler, we offer a lot of different levels of participation opportunities for folks. We, of course, run Special Olympics programs. We partner with the state to do that. And part of that, as you mentioned, is pairing people together. Part of this Special Olympics program includes unified sports, where you pair a non-disabled athlete with a disabled athlete, and they can encourage each other and help each other. So that's one of the programs that we offer. We also offer classes on everything that go along with what we call our CRP classes, or community recreation programs that we offer.
Glad you
through
figured out the
recreation.
abbreviations.
Yes, those acronyms.
We do a lot of abbreviations.
We do. And like I said, that covers everything from crafts to horseback riding, dancing. We work with a lot of local cities to offer programs in conjunction with them, programs that we could put on ourselves, but they're enhanced because we put them on with the City of Mesa or Tempe, and we're able to partner and offer more slots or longer trips, things like that. So we offer lots of cooperative programs, as we call them, and we have socials and special events with the cooperative programs, but also aside from those. And then kind of one of our pinnacle programs is a camp that we offer every summer. And it's a 6-week day camp for individuals with developmental disabilities from 5 to 21. And we've been running this for years in one of the local schools. There's field trips involved, there's swimming, and the participants just love it. And it ends with a talent show, we call it a variety show, and it's just a blast. And it allows the individuals that participate to have safe and structured fun and learn about recreation, which, you know, in different ways is important to everyone's life on some level. And so it's teaching people those skills, getting them involved in leisure activities, getting them out of the house, and seeing what other opportunities are out there in life.
Cool. You kind of answered my next question. But, you mentioned Special Olympics a little bit. Talk about that program, when they're held, how people get involved for something like that.
Well, I could probably spend the whole hour just talking about Special Olympics.
It's only half an hour.
Okay, all right. I'll make it quick. Special Olympics is a type of program that's offered through state Special Olympics, but it occurs on a variety of levels. We operate Special Olympics where we take athletes or young people or participants who are interested in learning a sport. And out of the 8 different sports, they can pick one, they can pick more than one, and we get them involved. And what we do is we offer training programs, and it really looks at what a person's abilities are. We have people who participate in bowling that, because of limited mobility, they use a ramp, and we set the ball on the top of the ramp and they push it, and that's how they bowl, and they're able to participate like that. And so we put someone at the level where they're able to be accomplished or be successful, and then we take them through training, and if they desire and if they meet the qualifications, they are able to go on into competitions, tournaments. There's competitions at a state level, and then national and international level. And in years past, we've had athletes from Chandler who have gone on to national and international level. It's really something to see, and the pride that's instilled in them because of that opportunity.
What is the criteria to participate in Special Olympics?
Well, a person with a developmental disability, and then we work with the state office very closely. We make sure that people are healthy enough to participate, so they have to go through the process of getting a physical and having a physical on form or in the books, if you could say that, before they are allowed to participate. So we're very thorough about that. We keep records very carefully and confidentially, but we want to make sure that we set people up for success.
Okay. And in terms of the registration process for Special Olympics, talk about that, and talk about some of your other programs you offer and how people would get involved or register.
Sure, it's interesting. We have a woman named Colette Prather, who is our Recreation Coordinator 1. She's kind of a one-woman show right now over all of our therapeutic recreation programs, and it pretty much all goes through her office with her and her helpers, and of course volunteers, which we could go on about as well, how much we rely on them. But pretty much everything goes through that office. We advertise our programs, including the Special Olympics program and our different events and socials, through our recreation quarterly magazine called Break Time. But we also have a whole separate newsletter that we email out to anyone who wants to be on the list. And it's called The Talk of the Town. So we do get out information that way. We do, of course, a lot with email, and we have a website. So really anyone who contacts our office, whether they want to contact the office as a volunteer, as a concerned parent, as a potential participant, a teacher who wants to know what else, someone like yourself, maybe referring people to us, it really will just spend time with them and find out how they would like to be involved and what their interests are, and kind of give them an introduction to what we have to offer. And if we don't offer it yet, we're certainly open to it. That's what we try to do.
Talk about a few other, are all your therapeutic programs just for younger folks, or there's some, you mentioned seniors earlier in the program, but.
Right, well, Camp Challenge is for participants up to 21 years of age, because like we were mentioning before, talking before the show, a lot of times people with disabilities who go through high school, they graduate from high school, and then what next? And does it mean that they can't participate in programs because they're not associated with the school anymore? So we try to really be open and allow people of all criteria, of all ages, to participate in our programs.
Cool. And there's a difference, people, you know, there's Paralympics out there and Special Olympics out there.
Correct.
And there's a difference. Paralympics generally is somebody with a disability, but not an IDD disability, but a functional disability. So, and you see a lot of things going on with that, and that's really grown quite a bit with technology, especially, and stuff. So, how can people volunteer for your programs?
Again, by contacting the office. It really doesn't take a lot. I mean, we do our due diligence and you know, make sure that people are there for the correct reason. But we thrive on volunteers. I can't even tell you how much we need our volunteers. We have parents that volunteer because their child is in the program or their son or daughter at any level. We have people that volunteer because they maybe had a family member at one time and they saw what struggles that person went through to be integrated into society. Really anyone who has an interest in working to better someone else's life, we could use them. We have people that do office work because that's what their skills set is,
Right.
and we'll put them to work.
But time frame, people always say, oh, volunteer, I can't do 30 hours a week. I mean,
Sure.
Are you looking for people 2 hours a week, 5 hours a week, whatever they're comfortable with?
Absolutely. Although I will warn people, if they do come in and talk to Colette and maybe thinking they're signing up, for an hour a month or something, and then all of a sudden they find themselves coming to every special event and every dance, and so it's addictive, I think.
Yeah,
because you see the effect on people. You're changing lives. Mm-hmm. And it's hard not to do that.
It's very cool. I mean, from the days of the disability movement, where kids were isolated, separate schools, all these different things, to what's happened today. People take a lot of things for granted, and we have a long way to go in the disability community, but it is still amazing what's gone on and stuff. So, Tim, let's go back to you and talk about, you've done a lot of, we've met each other, training together and different things, and you've been involved in a lot of different races and stuff. Talk about the Best Buddies program and what you're planning to do coming up with Patrick.
So a couple years ago,
and say who Patrick is. I guess that would,
So a couple years ago, this is where it all started. I met a young lady named Jessica Dunn with cerebral palsy as well, and she came to our buddy prom that we had downtown, and she was a split image of my niece Sydney, who passed away. And as soon as I saw her, tears just floodgates opened up. And about a month later, I reached out to our program staff and said, do you know who that young lady was? And they told me who it was. And I invited her into the office, and her and her mom were sitting in front of me, and just through social conversation, I just threw out, what do you guys think about doing a marathon with me? I would love to take your daughter through a marathon. And mom was just like jaw dropped down, and Jessica just, is little emotions as she could see with her, just big, huge gleam. And I knew right then and there that I was hooked, because her mom just said she was just absolutely so devastated and so surprised that the opportunity was even going to present itself. And so we did the Rock and Roll Marathon 2 years ago together. Last year, my goal was to have 10 chairs, and we ended up having 13 chairs at the starting line with 13 different runners. And then this year, our goal was to have not necessarily more chairs, but to have more of the community embrace these individuals with us on the team. And I think we're up to almost 60 runners this year on our team, which is absolutely huge. So that's been blossoming. So I said, well, why don't we take this a step farther? Why do we have to just limit this?
Too, so, yeah.
Why don't we just limit this to just running? Why don't we do this in all different types of sports? The one thing that I heard I put on a 12-hour fundraiser. It was a spin-a-thon. And I had parents come up like every hour and talk about what the value of the program was to them, being able to see their child run a marathon or come across that finish line. And I won't ever forget, one of the moms came to me, and without having a child with a disability of this nature, I can't get my mind frame around that and understand it. But when she got up there and she said, there's just something that you accept as you're growing, and you see your child growing, and that they're just never ever going to run across the finish line, and you just accept that. That just becomes part of what your life is. You just know that there's certain capabilities that your child will have. And she said, to be able to see her son last year come across the rock and roll finish line was just a huge array of possibilities, things that she had never even dreamed of, that her child would now possibly be able to do, because she had just tunnel visioned herself with her child. And so Patrick, who was in our program last year, again, a big, huge, gleaming, wonderful smile and joy and just full of energy as you've met him, and just giggles at everything. we decided, that I wanted to take it a step farther and really make a stance with our IDD community, and asked him if he wanted to do an Ironman triathlon with me. And of course, the response was, what's an Ironman? And so we went through that whole thing. And, since that day, it was a challenge to get any local promoter to let us come down to Tempe Town Lake and to race, or anywhere else for that matter, because of the limitations and the risk, I guess, that's associated with it.
In their minds.
In their minds.
Right, yeah.
But we found a promoter that has embraced it. And then since then, another one has embraced it. And since then, I've now done a race with him, and I'm going to do another one this Sunday with him again, just because he's embracing us. So we decided to do this Ironman together. So we're going to go and swim 2.4 miles, 112 bike, and run a marathon to boot, and hopefully be one of the first, I think, non-family Ironman finishers ever. So we're really, really excited and very scared and very anxious all at the same time.
It's very cool. And for people who don't know about it, Ironman, what Tim explained, and this is now, Patrick will be in like a dinghy boat behind you. You'll be pulling him basically, and you have a kind of a wagon or whatever you want to call it behind, and then pushing him in a stroller. And I know from track practice, because you and I worked out together, just doing Patrick one lap around the track, I'm thinking like, wow. And so Ironman's hard enough to do by yourself, and because I help out there every year, but to see you do that, it's pretty amazing. But you hit on something that's really important to me, that a parent had thought there were limitations. And knowing from my sister, and you guys know the story, is that those limitations are put by people, they're also put by society, and there really aren't any limitations. Yeah. And I've seen the disability community grow around the world, and amazing things can happen, and it's just breaking some of those barriers down. The Best Buddies program is a great example of people not being afraid of hanging out with kids and getting those rewarding experiences and things like that. So Sandy, any more stuff on your programs?
Well, the thing that occurs to me is we're always, like Tim mentioned, we're always looking for how do we expand our programs and offer more to people. And one of the ways we do that is through our fundraising. And not to steal your thunder at all, if that's what you're going to talk about, but we have a very special event coming up on November 14th. Is our annual golf challenge at Bear Creek Golf Course. And so we invited all those golfers that really enjoy that to come out and do it for a really good cause. Cool. And again, that would be through our Therapeutic Recreation Office. Yeah.
Tim, any last thoughts? And fundraising, and having only 4 people, almost all your money, just like our program, almost all of it goes into the program too.
It does,
which is great.
Yeah. I mean, we skinnied our expenses so much now that it's every penny that we pretty much raise here is going straight to programs. But, for me, I could pitch about the fundraising part and all that, but for me, my opportunity is to say, what, next time that you're walking down the street and you see somebody that might be different than you, just acknowledge them. Just see them, just look at them in their eyes and acknowledge and validate them. Because in a lot of cases, you have a lot of these individuals that might be on the street corner with a sign because they're hungry, because they really don't know what to do and they don't know what's next. So in a lot of cases for these individuals, just look at them. You don't have to give them money, but just look at them and validate their existence. That's all I would ask is, just see others for who they are.
Great. Well, that's a wrap for today. So thank you guys for joining us. I'm Councilmember Rick Heumann. This has been Chandler in Focus. We've been talking about Best Buddies and our Special Olympic program here at the city, and thanks for watching.